The year is quickly going by, and here at the Y'all Show, we want to remind you that, for about 2 months now, we've been right in the thick of the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season, and we want to do our due diligence and be an ambassador to all y'all and let you know that, frankly, we want to keep you safe and get through this fall all as well as possible, and we don't have any monster hurricanes going on across the Southland because we've seen too many times in recent memory areas of the South come under tremendous devastation of the Atlantic hurricane season and deaths and destruction and so much more. Places are still recovering years after the fact. And we know how big hurricanes play a role in our region. We wanted to tell you a little bit about it. Now, I've gone to some different websites and checked out what they're saying about the season, and the latest figures I can get is there's over a 50%, or roughly 55% estimation that this year the hurricane season won't be as bad as it could be. It's expected to be less fearsome, if you will, in 2026. Again, take that however you want. All it takes is one hurricane to deal with, and you'll know that, it's not a good thing. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to Y'all Show. We're all over the place, and we appreciate all the follows and the good word about our Southern-based podcast. But checking out the kind of experts, what they're saying, if we check out the NOAA website and their weather summary, we've already seen two hurricane, or at least tropical storms, come into play so far this year. We had Arthur and Bertha, and if you go back and look at that map, you can see both of them tracked there in the Gulf of America and ended up going ashore. It looked like one was right there on the Texas-Louisiana line around Orange, Texas, and then the other one more on the other side of Corpus Christi, where it ultimately hit landfall. But both were tropical storms back, one in mid-June, one in mid-July, with maximum winds, as you can see there, no more than 50 miles per hour for both of those storms. So we got off relatively easy on those two particular storms that have already come forward here in 2026. Looking at the other websites that show what we can expect, if you go to weather.com, they expect, according to their experts, 12 named storms, with 6 becoming hurricanes here this year. And that was earlier this year, they predicted that. And of course, Colorado State University is, I don't know how they got involved with hurricanes, but they're a big part, as well as the University of Miami, on the hurricane prediction market. And they're predicting, I think, CSU 13. So Category 3 hurricanes, you can see there on this prediction, both saying around 2 and at lower than average expected. And that's going back to 2023. You can see the hurricane tracks there. We had one come ashore in Florida. That was devastating. But it's nasty. It's nasty out there, as we know from our experience. I've been through one hurricane in my life, and I was able to leave the coastal city right before the hurricane struck, but I was only about 2 hours inland, felt the effect, and then I had to go back to the scene of the crime a couple of days later, and it's not fun. You have no power, you've got to clean up, and probably the memory that I'll always remember was the drinking water. For months, we had to get canned drinks in that area. We had to go to fast food restaurants, and when you'd get a drink, they'd give you a canned drink because they couldn't use their soda fountains. And I guess that's still the case when your storms are bad enough. It's not fun. But luckily, I had my life, and just like everybody else, most of the people that survived that one, believe it or not, that hurricane, an example of how devastating hurricanes often are in this part of the region. Yes, they can cause death and destruction right where they come ashore, but this particular hurricane killed more people 3 and 4 hours inland from the flooding. We saw that in the hurricane that hit Florida in 2024. Yeah, September, the one that went into North Carolina with all the horrible flooding in the mountains of North Carolina. And that thing wasn't as bad where it came ashore, I think, on the Panhandle. But then it went up into the mountains of Georgia and portions of South Carolina, North Carolina, even Virginia, and just caused major problems. These things, they truly are a regional issue. And that's why here at the show, All About the South, we want to make sure we give hurricanes a proper respect, because we don't want to lose any lives on our watch if we can help it. We want to try to prevent as much death and destruction, and just getting out there and let it be known. I know we're not even quite to August, but it seems like these things really start churning in August and September. I think it was Katrina in 2005 was late August when that one came ashore in Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana. And remember, even with Katrina, an example of how these hurricanes work, in New Orleans, they were cheering after the hurricane passed by because New Orleans had been saved. Well, it had been saved from the brunt of the storm of the hurricane force winds, but those levees broke a day or two later, and New Orleans became an absolute disaster, as we all can remember in 2005 when Katrina, I think it was 2005, could have been 2004. I mean, it's been so long. I mean, unfortunately, the old time clock keeps on ticking. But it's been 20 years, 20 something years when Katrina, which I guess still goes down as top 2 or 3 worst hurricanes in the South in the last 50 years. I know a lot of the old people on the Gulf Coast remember Camille. That was a terrible one. And then you had, I think David was a terrible one some years ago. And all of them are bad. And that's why we want to get out here on today's show and let you know. Now, we do have, I mean, we may be able to tell you based on what the experts say, they don't expect category 4s and 5s. We've already seen 2, as we said. But I wanted to pull up this little graphic. Every year we have our hurricane names, and we've already seen Arthur and Bertha be named storms, as they were tropical storms that hit, one in June, one in July, as we said a moment ago. But we have next up on the docket, the third storm would be Cristobal, followed by Dolly, Hurricane Dolly. I don't know how good that would be. Eduard, Faye, Gonzalo, Hannah, Isaias, Josephine, Kyle, Leah, Marco, Nana, Omar, Paulette, Renee, Sally, Teddy, Vicky, and Wilfred. That's your list of the Atlantic hurricane storms, of which most have not yet been named, and maybe we won't be naming them at all. Boy, wouldn't that be great. But so far, 2 already in the rear view for 2026. Let's hope they're right. Let's hope that it ends up being a very mild fall. I think we've kind of gotten off the last 2 years at least pretty easy on the hurricane season. The worst part was likely that devastation in the mountains of North Carolina more than any state. I went through there a couple of weeks ago, and it's still rough through there. They've still got loads of bridges down and construction going on, and they just weren't ready for it. They weren't ready for that tremendous amount of rainfall in that short amount of time. That's why these things are so scary. That's why we will be on top of it. And when we have any potential major storms heading our way, you can be assured here at y'all.com, we're going to be on it. And we're going to let you know how you can get through this. We will, in a future podcast, break down sort of the hurricane tips, what you can have ready to go, what you can do to board up your home, for example. But always have the emergency supplies ready if need be. And the big thing they always say is, and I know it gets tiresome in some of these coastal areas if you constantly have to leave, but it only takes one time. But the main thing is to get out of there and get out of there quickly. In fact, I was down in the Forgotten Coast, I believe it's called. It's that corner of the Florida Gulf Coast, the area that got hit by the storm that went up in North Carolina. I was down there, I guess it would have been in the fall of 2024. And I mean, it was actually wintertime, but that little area there got hit by that terrible storm. And I mean, I went to the beach down there on the Gulf, and it was like out of a movie, a horror movie. It was so terrible. Looked worse than what I, remembered from the storm that I had gone through many decades before. But we want to let you know, because it's a fact of life here in the South. We've got a wonderful region that we all call home. If you're lucky enough to be a Southerner, and if you're not a Southerner, maybe you'll get here one day if you're lucky. But unfortunately, that's a reality. We do have issues with weather, storms like hurricanes. We've got tornadoes. We have winter weather. We got a little bit of a lot of different things here in God's country. We'll stay on it. But again, as our map said, up next is Cristobal. That's the next hurricane to be named if we get there. So just want to let you know here with our 2026 hurricane forecast from all of us here at y'all.com. Thank you for tuning in, and stay tuned to your local weather forecast.